Part 221. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2205. There is no post station in the desert, but there are inns, which are specially used for accommodation and supplies for passing merchants and travelers. The inn is on the side of the road, and before their carriage arrived, the staff greeted them warmly. Seeing that there were so many of them, they said apologetically, "Misters, there are only 3 upper rooms in the store." Crowd: "That's really unfortunate." Buddy: "But there is only one inn from our family within 100 miles. Master Yu quickly asked, "I remember that there was a small town in your inn." Usually small towns are located on the edge of an oasis. The guy grinned and said, "Yes, there is an oasis more than 100 miles along this road. So now only their inn can be replenished, which is a unique business." Everyone was helpless and could only choose to stay. Master Yu said very obediently, "It's fine for me and the guys to squeeze out of the room. The adults should go to the room to rest first." Nikanjun thought for a while, and felt that he could neither compete with Zhou Man, the chief official, nor with Yin or the county man's place. He glanced at Mr. Zhuang and felt that although his official position was equal to the other party, he had never. It is not good for such an old civil servant to grab a room in his hand, so he waved his hand and let people take the carriage and horse to take good care of it, while the rest went to the inn to rest. Mr. Zhuang lives in the upper room with 2 pedestrians. The bed is a bit small, but there is a wooden couch in the upper room, so you can still sleep if you squeeze it. But Bai Shan and the others were different. The 4 teenagers went to see the so-called lower room, the Datong shop, and were successfully forced to retreat. They obediently returned to the upper room and said, "Let's squeeze the 4 of us." Man Bao waved his hand very generously and said, "Just move the wooden couch in my room." Daji took the guards to move it, and the family members took out their bedding, tubs, and other items from the car, and brought them all in the room to replace them. Not only the guys in the store, but also Master Yu were taken aback for a moment. Seeing that they were so surprised, the steward turned his head and smiled at them and said, "Several young masters in our family recognize the bed, so use the quilts and pillows that you are used to." The guys reacted and looked at them, only to realize that they were different from the merchants who had passed by before, and their identities seemed to be more valuable. They smiled, then took the quilts and tubs from their inn and took them down. "Exactly, there are so many people living in the lower room at once, and they need a quilt." Zhou Liru also took out the quilts of their aunts and nephews from the carriage, while Man Bao took out the daily necessities such as the tub and towels and put them in the room. The same is true when they stay outside, but they used to live in a post station, and the maids of the post station help to do all these things. It's pretty good to do it by myself. Man Bao went up and down twice. After a bit of activity, I felt that the soreness of riding the carriage for a day was much relieved. She opened the window and looked down. She met the eyes of a few people sitting under the greenhouse outside drinking tea. Man Bao smiled politely at each other. The endless yellow, only then retracted his gaze. She closed the window, and the people in the shed also looked away. One of them licked their lips and said, "Brother, this little lady is really good looking, with thin skin and tender flesh, and she doesn't look like the people here at all." The other party also withdrew his gaze, drank the wine in the bowl, and said, "Keep your tricks, didn't you see it, this is the official family." The other party was stunned for a moment and asked, "How did the officials go our way?" He said, "There is a lot of trouble with bandits on the other road, so if the road there is not clear, we can only go this way." The other party got excited and shouted, "Is it because of smallpox?" Their boss didn't speak. He said, "As I said, now that the smallpox has just passed, everyone is still panicking. Let's take this opportunity to build a town or 2, loot the things and leave, and it will be enough for us to be rich and rich for a lifetime." Man Bao, who had closed the window, turned around and went out to find Nikanjun. Nikanjun was talking to Bai Shan next door. As soon as Man Bao pushed the door open, the two of them turned to look. Man Bao closed the door, turned around and said, "The people who live in this inn seem to be a little different. Nikanjun, do you want to send someone to inquire?" Nikanjun nodded with a sullen face. Bai Gongzi is also talking about this matter with Xiaoguan. I also think that the people who live in this inn seem to be too brave, and Xiaoguan will go to check in a while. Man Bao nodded and said in a low voice, "Take care of our luggage." Nishanjun decided to arrange twice as many people to guard the luggage at night. When he retired, Bai Shan asked Man Bao, "You feel it too?" Man Bao said, "2 trips up and down, their eyes make me very unhappy." She said, "Today we have an early rest and leave early the next morning." Bai Shan responded and asked the steward to arrange the supplies. There are so many of them who have to eat and drink on the road, even if they only prepare water for 2 days, but this kind of thing has always been done by the steward, but because the feeling of staying in this time is not very good, so Man Bao decided to go there in person. Look at the prepared water. In the end, before she went, the steward looked up helplessly, bowed and said, "Master, Miss Man, the water in this inn is too expensive." Man Bao didn't ask how expensive it was, and said directly, "Then just buy some green vegetables. We still have the rice noodles and meat and eggs with us." Steward, and water. Make up. The steward emphasized, "The water here costs money, and it's very expensive. What they replenish along the way is raw water, which is boiled by themselves, so just go straight to the well and the staff at the general inn can arrange it for you directly." Manbao reacted with hindsight, "Oh, this is a desert, and water is expensive." Bai Shan stared at him and asked, "There's less water here, so can I still take a bath?" Manbao was also nervous, "Can't you take a shower?" "Steward, is that what we're talking about now? Aren't we talking about money?" Bai Erlang also turned his head to look over, and said solemnly and in charge, "Master must take a bath." Lu Huan, not bad. Yin Or on the side smiled and said, "Money is not a problem." The steward breathed a sigh of relief and was about to resign when Bai Shan suddenly stopped him and asked, "How much is the water?" The steward said, 20 cents a barrel. Everyone stared at each other, and even Yin Or couldn't help but stunned. "How much does it cost us to go to the house for one night?" Steward, 80 words after a pause, he added, "It doesn't count as a bath." Bai Erlang turned his head to look at Bai Shan. "I remember we lived in a post house, and a room was only 50 cents, right? The post house's room is much better than this." Bai Shan said, "Rare is the most valuable thing. This is the only inn on this road. Are there wells separate? I woke up today and took another nap, it was almost 1 o'clock, I'm lazy." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2206. "Yes, locked in the backyard, no one can approach," the steward said. "Young master, the villain has seen it, there are a lot of young people in their inn, and the guys seem to have some skill in their hands." Bai Shan nodded, "If you can keep an inn here, you will naturally have some power in your hands. Forget it, buy it, it's more expensive, and add a little more. We have to spend at least one night in the desert. If it doesn't go well, it may stay for a longer time, and the rest is okay, there must be enough water. The steward should go down and retire." Bai Shan turned around and reached out to them, "Give me the money. Obviously, the more you go west, the higher the cost, and the money in the public center is not enough. Now Bai Erlang is the poorest." He squeezed his purse and said, "Shouldn't you be full of treasures to give money?" She used to eat and live in the post station, but she didn't pay the public, but now there is no post station. Man Bao looked for the purse, and Bai Shan said quietly, "She can report the official account, can you?" It was only then that Man Bao remembered, "Yeah, I can report to the Ministry of Household after I go back." Lu Huan said, "My grandfather won't pay you all." He said, "Even if my father returns from Suzhou to save his relatives, he can only report 1/3 of the report, you." He looked Man Bao up and down and said, "I think it's not bad that we can report 1/4 of the account back based on our current distance." Man Bao was speechless, and finally took out the money. "There is little water here, even taking a bath in a separate bathroom, 30 cents per person. The cost of a bath is comparable to staying in an inn outside for one night." But Man Bao and the others didn't mind. They took out the clothes to be changed and put them in the basket, brought their pancreas and went to the bathhouse with great interest. It was the first time they took a bath in the bathhouse when they grew up. Unfortunately, there are only 2 girls in the entire inn, she and Zhou Liru, so as soon as the door is opened, there are only 2 people inside, and it is no different from washing in their own room. Man Bao put the clothes basket aside, turned around and took the hot water from the door and poured it into the bathtub. There are only 2 people on their side, but Bai Shan and the others are a group of people. There are almost all men in this inn, and there are not many bathing people. As soon as a few people entered, they could not help but close their eyes when they saw a group of naked men inside. Knowing that they would be ashamed, Nai Kenjun pointed to a place after laughing, "Little sons, there is a small cubicle over there, you can go there to wash." Bai Shan reluctantly nodded calmly and pulled his friends over. Lu Huan was the only one who had experience in bathing. He looked around and saw that all 3 of them were flushed, and couldn't help but wonder, "What's so embarrassing about this, yin, or forget it, haven't you 2 ever been in a hot spring?" Bai Shan glanced at him and said, "No." Lu Huan immediately said, "I'll invite you when you return to the capital. Not only can you take a bath in the hot spring, but you can also go out to take a bath. There is a family next to the Imperial College, and the people who go there are all gentlemen, and it's not expensive. It's just that the drinks and refreshments cost money." Bai Erlang couldn't help but ask, "Isn't it bad to take a bath at your own house, why do you want to go out?" Lu Huan shook his head after thinking about it, "How do I know? Everyone will go, they invite me, I will go. But the classmates of the Kuazijian are because it's cold in the dormitory in winter. Anyway, everyone doesn't take a bath every day, so save a little more, and then spend some money to go to the bathroom." Bai Shan looked dazed and asked, "What are you saving?" "Gather the dust." The faces of Bai Shan and the others were so red that they were speechless. Lu Huan moved quickly. As soon as he came in, he touched the water in the soup pool. He felt that the temperature was okay, so he immediately pulled his clothes and jumped in. When he looked back and saw the 3 of them still standing dumbfounded, he said, "What are you still doing? Hurry up. Come down." Bai Shan closed his mouth and asked, "Wash in a pool? This water? What's the matter? It's like soaking in a hot spring. It's good to change the water once a day." Yin Hexiao took a step back and asked with a strange expression, "Is there anyone who has soaked it before?" Bai Erlang was also terrified. Bai Shan quickly returned to the cage rationally, shook his head and said, "It shouldn't be, it's still early, I just saw that it was all our people outside, so no one should come to bathe today." Bai Erlang, did someone come in a while? The 3 listened to the noise and frolic outside, and immediately took off their clothes and washed them out. They were fast, but no matter how fast they were, it took 2/4 of an hour when they went out. When the 4 of them walked to the door with blushing faces, a group of big men with clothes on their shoulders happened to come in outside. When they saw them, someone in the crowd blew a sound. With a loud whistle and a yo sound, the crowd burst into laughter and looked at them with a playful look, many of whom were obscene. Bai Shan's face sank, he looked up at them indifferently, and then shouted, "Daji!" Daji, who was guarding outside the bathhouse, came over, pushed people away and walked to Bai Shan, then turned around and stared at them with unkind eyes. The person who was still laughing suddenly smiled, put away the smile on his face, and glared at Daji. Daji did not give in, watching them quietly. The bearded man at the head also looked at Bai Shan and the others jokingly. Although he didn't play like the people behind him, he raised his eyebrows, but the smile on his face when he saw Daji pushed his people in. When it disappeared, he looked at Bai Shan, with a slight smile on his face, took 2 steps forward, stood in front of Daji and said, "Get out of the way." Daji stood still, but now Bai Shan and the others cast their playful eyes on their faces. The beard on the other side's cheek twitched, and he was about to reach out and turn it away. The soldiers in the bathroom, who noticed the different atmosphere here, wiped their bodies indiscriminately, put on their pants, and came out. "Sir, what's wrong?" Seeing the people behind them, the other party lowered his eyes, raised his eyes after a while, and said to Daji, "Excuse me." Daji, "No. You." The bearded man stretched out his hand to stop the angry men who were rushing up behind him, stared at Daji for a moment, and then his eyes fell on Bai Shan, who was behind him, and pulled out an inconspicuous smile. "This son, we go in and take a shower." Bai Shan's hair was still wet, he carried his basket and said lazily, "Unfortunately, we are going out." The other party narrowed his eyes and looked at the guards and soldiers who were gathering more and more behind him. When he saw Nikanjun walking out with his upper body naked, he gave way to the side. "Okay, sir, go first." The people behind him reluctantly gave way. Daji glanced at Bai Shan nodded slightly, and then he turned to protect the 4 of them and went out. Before going out, Bai Shanlin looked back at Nikanjun and smiled slightly. As soon as they left, the bearded man was about to bring his own people in, but he was blocked by Nikanjun after only 2 steps. Nikanjun stretched out his hand and rubbed the skin on his body, rubbing out a small ball of mud to bounce off, and said to them, "The bathhouse is full, and it can't hold people anymore. Come back when we're done washing. See you at 10 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2207. Nikanjun had a lot of soldiers, and there were also a lot of guards from the Bai family and the Yin family. Except for the luggage guards, the 2 stewards and Daji didn't come to take a bath. The rest were in the bathroom, so I took a look. Looking at it, it seems that there are people in the bathroom. The other party was silent for a while, and didn't think that more than a dozen of them could beat so many of them, let alone the scars on their bodies. So the other party was silent for a while and then turned around and took the person away. Nikanjun snorted, turned around and patted the soldiers on the shoulders and said, "Hurry up and wash, go out and guard the adults after washing." Bai Shan and the others carried the baskets back upstairs, and first told Mr. Zhuang to let them take a bath, and then turned to look for Manbao. Manbao and Zhou Liru hadn't come back yet. He thought about it, wiped his hair, and took Daji to wait outside the bathhouse, fearing that something would happen to them on the way back. Bai Erlang and the others had nothing to do, so they went with him. So the 5 men sat opposite the women's bathhouse and looked at the door of the women's bathhouse. Bai Erlang suggested, "Should we shout so that the people inside know that we are waiting outside?" Bai Shan said, "Let them wash slowly, there is nothing to do, just wait." The passerby was startled by the 5 people. Seeing them staring at the women's bathroom, there was a look on their face for a while. After he stopped talking, he didn't say anything and turned to leave. But after a while, a young woman came over with her waist twisted. As soon as she saw them, she threw a handkerchief and laughed. "Oh, why are you guys sitting here?" She smiled and stepped forward, ignoring their wet hair and the obvious appearance of taking a bath, and pointed directly in the other direction. "A few young masters want to take a bath, the slave family will take you there, that's where your men go." Woolen cloth. Bai Shan looked at her gently, and said politely, "We've washed it, and we're waiting for our companions here." The woman was stunned for a moment, then smiled and waved her handkerchief. "Why, you are afraid that our inn will not be able to eat the little lady in it? We are a good shop, not a black shop." Bai Shan said, "We don't worry about others, and we have nothing to do when we are free, so just sit here and wait. Sister, go and do it yourself." This. She was here to persuade people to leave, otherwise what would happen if a few men squatted across from the door of the women's bathroom? Just as he was hesitating, the door of the bathhouse opened, and Man Bao and Zhou Liru came out with flushed cheeks. Bai Shan was stunned for a moment, then stepped forward, wrapped the cloak in his hand around Man Bao, and picked up the hat and put it on her. Man Bao instantly had only half of her face left outside. She was a little stunned. "Why, I'm not cold." Bai Shan said, "The wind is strong, be careful if you blow the wind and get sick." "Where is the wind coming from now?" Zhou Liru on the side asked. "Little uncle, what about me?" Bai Shan paused, then remembered that he forgot Zhou Liru. Seeing him overturn the car, Bai Erlang and Lu Huan patted their thighs unkindly and laughed. Daji turned around and left, and after a while he took a cloak and gave it to Zhou Liru. Zhou Liru just put it on, but still pouted and complained to Man Bao, "Little aunt, little uncle lied, he is not afraid that you will be blown by the wind, but that you will be seen." The woman on the side also withdrew her amazed gaze, and Man Bao also saw her and asked with a smile, "Who is this?" The woman shook her handkerchief and smiled, "I was the shopkeeper of the inn. The shopkeeper in front was my head. I was busy at the back just now, but the nobles didn't greet me when they came. It's really rude and rude. The main reason is that most of the people who come to stay in their inn are men, even with women, and most of them are concubines or outer chambers, and some are not even outer chambers. Come to the front, a group of stinky men, what's there to entertain?" But it was clear that the two little girls who came this time had different identities than those of the previous ones. The shopkeeper couldn't help but be more polite. She smiled and sent people upstairs. After they all entered, she turned and went downstairs. The smile on the top is put away. She happened to meet the big bearded man who was walking downstairs angrily and led people downstairs. She raised her eyebrows and looked at the man, who whispered, "They suffered a loss just now, so they went to the shopkeeper to reason. As a result, I was fooled by the shopkeeper." He smiled and said, "When did our shopkeeper make sense?" As soon as the woman heard it, she stretched out her hand and gave him a head, glared at him and said, "What are you talking about? Why is the boss unreasonable?" Yes, little stinky mouth, it's time to fight, it's time to fight." And the big bearded man who left the inn and went to the yard next to him also slapped a man in the face, almost hitting him to the ground. He suppressed his anger and said, "Did you not mention that eldest brother is not allowed to provoke them? Are you satisfied with our deaf ears and whistling, now that our skins have been peeled off and stepped on the ground?" Everyone didn't dare to say a word, and the one who was slapped was the one who whistled at Bai Shan and the others before. He didn't dare to say a word, he covered his face and bowed his head and stood aside. Someone couldn't see it, so he spoke for him, "Fifth brother, 18 didn't do anything. Is it because their group of officials are making too much fuss?" "Yes, I'm afraid of what they will do. Emperor Tiangao is far away, so there are just a few officers. It's just that there are no more officers than us." The words were cut off, and everyone choked for a while before saying, "What are you afraid of? Wait for the brothers to come back." "Okay, shut up, you guys are being honest these 2 days. Big brother will be back in a while," and annoyed Big brother, "but it's not my slap." Everyone shuddered, and all bowed their heads in response. Bai Shan took the cloak from Man Bao's hand and hung it on the shelf, sat on the side watching her wipe her hair, and said about the conflict they had just had at the door of the bathhouse, saying, "There's nothing going on at the moment, it's probably not a fight. Get up, but those people's eyes are very bad, and at first glance, they are not good people. Even if we only stay here for one night, we should be careful. Man Bao nodded. Bai Shan said, let's not go out to eat during dinner. Let's eat in the house, and let Nikanjun and the others eat below. Mr. Zhuang, however, was reluctant to eat in the house, and said, you 6 young ones eat in the house, and we eat below. Wei Xingren also told them not to worry. Man Bao knew that they wanted to take the opportunity to inquire about the news, but he didn't stop him and nodded in response. Lu Huan was surprised, you don't want to go downstairs. Seeing him eager to try, Bai Erlang grabbed him and said, be quiet, didn't you see them looking at us badly? We all look so good looking, so be careful. Bai Shan nodded in agreement, knowing that there is danger. How can you go down and provoke more danger? Lu Huan was not convinced. Then you are still fighting with people at the door of the bathroom. Yin Or said, if we back down at that time, the trouble would be even greater. Bai Shan nodded, we don't go out to eat so as not to cause trouble, but when trouble comes, we have to fight back strongly. Otherwise, we back down and others will treat us as weak, and there will only be more trouble in the future. Okay, I can't tell you, but I really want to go down and have a look. I haven't eaten at the inn in the desert yet. Bai Shan said, it's okay, I can eat it tomorrow. He said, we'll have breakfast down there tomorrow, and we'll leave when we're done. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2208. There were so many people living in the inn at once, but it was quite lively. Everyone gathered in the lobby during dinner time. The dozen or so tables were full, and there were not enough seats, so the inn had more support outside the greenhouse. A few tables don't mind showing up outside. The meals in the inn are almost the same, including mutton, beef, and various wines, but vegetables are rare. The steward who came back from ordering and the little masters said, it is said that the vegetables here are more expensive than the beef. Man Bao asked, can the cows here be killed at will? Just kill, the steward said, the cows here are not farming cattle, they only eat grass and grow meat. By the way, there is also milk, they will produce milk. Miss Man, would you like to eat their milk tea? I heard that it is boiled with fresh milk and tea leaves, and some green onions and ginger are added to it. It tastes very good, and it also wards off the cold. Man Bao came excitedly, okay, I'll try it. Bai Erlang and the others had never eaten such milk tea, and they all said they wanted to try it. The steward went down and brought them a few bowls of milk tea. There was also a saucer with some salt in it. He said, the shopkeeper said that some people are not used to drinking it, so you can add some salt to taste. Man Bao took a bowl and smelled it. He could only smell the fragrance of milk and the smell of ginger slices, so he took a sip. The taste was quite miraculous. Man Bao said, it might taste better if you remove the green onions. Bai Shan also thought, just add tea leaves and ginger slices, why add green onions? That being said, they still drank the milk tea and sat in the room waiting for the food to come. The speed of the inn is very fast. From the time they arrived, the kitchen began to prepare for the slaughter of sheep and cattle. Because there were only so many dishes, I knew with my toes that they would order them all, but the difference was only a few dishes. The dishes were brought up quickly, stewed mutton, cold beef, and a small plate of vegetables, and the rest were cakes and steamed buns. Chang Shao also brought Man Bao's medicinal food to Yin or Kai, which was actually a jar of porridge, which was stewed with chicken and a few herbs. As for a whole chicken, Yin probably couldn't finish it, so everyone had a share. Bai Shan didn't eat it, but gave Man Bao a bowl, then looked at De Ji and said, give a bowl to Mr. and the 2 pedestrians, and Nikanjun will also send a bowl. Man Bao pointed to the chicken that was still intact and said, Nikanjun likes to eat meat. Send this chicken to him, and we'll just eat porridge. The essence is on the porridge. Chang Shao responded with a smile, filled a pot of porridge, and then brought the whole chicken and sent it down. Man Bao took a mouthful of porridge, and there was only a faint medicinal smell. Yin Wei also felt that it was good, so he didn't move the cake, and only ate the porridge with the dishes on the table. His spleen and stomach were weak, but the other people had a good appetite. After eating a bowl of porridge, it was like eating nothing, so they all stretched out their hands to get the steamed buns. Crispy and crunchy and delicious. Bai Shan ordered the beef plate and said, "Beef is delicious too." A few people started eating with relish. They didn't eat fast, but they weren't slow. They were very serious when they were eating. After a quarter of an hour, several people slowly stopped their chopsticks, but the downstairs was just lively. When Man Bao heard a loud shout from below, he immediately dropped his chopsticks and ran out the door to look down. He saw that everyone in the lobby was crowding to the door to look at it. Outside. So I opened the window and looked down, and I saw two people wrestling together in the open space outside, but they couldn't stand it, and the people on both sides were surrounding them and cheering for them. Bai Shan pulled Bai Erlang away and squeezed it in and glanced down. Seeing that not only Naijian Jun, but also Mr. Zhuang were standing by, he said, "It's okay, they are competing." Man Bao also recognized that one of them was their soldier, but the other one did not, and should belong to another gang. When the people below looked up, she retracted her head, gave space to Bai Shan, and asked, "Didn't you say that you had a conflict with them today, and you almost got into a fight?" Bai Shan looked up at the people above and below him, he smiled at him, nodded slightly, but answered Man Bao's words, "Isn't this not a fight? Don't worry, Nai Kenjun has experience in fighting and can do it." When making friends, they don't make enemies on purpose. The man below swept his gaze, did not see the person he wanted to see, smiled at Bai Shan, and withdrew his gaze. Bai Shan also left the window and gave up the space to Lu Huan and Zhou Liru. Yin couldn't squeeze them, so he just glanced at them. He had already sat back at the table at this time, and gave Man Bao a chopstick of beef, and asked Bai Shan, who came over, "What?" His eyes swept over the frowning brows of the two and asked, "Is there a problem?" Bai Shan shook his head, and Man Bao said, "It's just that I'm not feeling well. Don't eat too much. After a while, go to bed. We'll leave early tomorrow morning." Yin He and Bai Shan looked at each other and nodded. Bai Erlang and the others were watching with relish while huddled by the window. Bai Erlang turned his head and said, "We won a game." Bai Shan tore up the cake and asked, "Again?" "Well, it's the second game." They also provoked Nai Kenjun and wanted Nai Kenjun to end. It was busy outside, but Man Bao and the others never went downstairs. After dinner, they sat in the room to rest. Occasionally, they walked to the window and looked down. When the genius got dark, Man Bao and Zhou Liru went back to the house to prepare to sleep. Man Bao lay on the bed, exhaled, closed his eyes and said to Keek, "I'll pay for the points, you can help me check the situation inside and outside the inn, and warn me if there is any change." Keek responded, deducted a point and then silently extended it. Because of the many points deducted, he also recorded a screen for her very intimately. Man Bao was relieved, yawned, and fell asleep with the quilt in his arms. Zhou Liru was so sleepy that he couldn't open his eyes. The two aunts and nephews fell asleep slowly, but the people downstairs were still drinking and guessing. Mr. Zhuang looked at the time, nodded with Nai Kenjun and went upstairs to rest with the two pedestrians. Although Nai Kenjun did not stop his subordinates from drinking, he did not allow them to drink too much. When he saw that it was almost time, he drove them back to sleep. He picked up his knife and also went back to the house, so one person held a glass of wine in front of him. "Brother, today my brothers are ignorant and offended a few in the bathhouse, I will apologize for them and you." Nai Kenjun raised his eyebrows, glanced at the drink in the bowl, and reached out to take it. He drank it and said with a hearty smile, "You're welcome, my brother is forthright, and I won't be embarrassed. In the future, my brother will still be optimistic about his own brother's tricks, so don't look at it indiscriminately. Some people are not for me to wait and see." The other party smiled and nodded. Brother said yes. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2209. Manbao opened her eyes and reacted for a while before she heard Keek calling her in her mind. She didn't get up for a while, but moved her hands and feet to wake up her body from her deep sleep, and then she lifted the quilt. Her eyes were also adapted to the darkness, and she could vaguely see the furnishings in the room. She got out of bed, felt the darkness, walked to the window, opened a slit slightly and looked down. The following 24 horses were lined up at the door, and under the dim light, she saw that this afternoon, the group of people went out one after another with their luggage and mounted their horses directly. The shopkeeper, who had only met twice, sent people to the door and bowed their hands to them with a smile. The person in the lead took over the horse and suddenly felt something. He raised his head to look at him like electricity, and Manbao leaned back subconsciously. Keek saw her heart beating faster and couldn't help but say, "Host, I'm not looking at you." After a pause, he felt that the description was inaccurate, and then said, "According to the angle of light refraction, his eyes just swept here, and now he is looking at the window next door." As soon as Manbao heard this, he leaned up to look again and saw that he was still looking up at him. Under the firelight, he smiled slightly and hugged his hands directly at the top. If it wasn't for Keek, she would almost doubt the ceremony. "Do it for yourself." Manbao moved in his heart and asked, "Bai Shan is also awake?" Keek responded and said, "He also opened the window." Bai Shan didn't sleep very well. Although the movement below was light, he was still woken up. At first, he also opened the window slightly and looked down through the opening, but the other party found him and looked up. Bai Shan didn't dodge, and looked at the other party through the crack of the window for a while, and after confirming that he could really detect his gaze, he opened the window generously to look at the other party. After Bai Shan paused for a while, he also smiled, hugged his arms and greeted him in return. After he led his men away from the inn, the smile on Bai Shan's face fell. He glanced down, saw the innkeeper and nodded with him, and finally closed the window and went back to sleep. Bai Erlang was still sleeping on the bed, not knowing what to do. Even Yin he was not woken up, he was lying on a wooden couch with the quilt in his arms and slept soundly. He sat on the edge of the bed and thought about it for a while, and after calming down, he lifted the quilt and lay down. Manbao also closed the window tightly and went back to the bed to lie down. Because she didn't get enough sleep, she felt that she couldn't open her eyes, and the frightened sobriety had disappeared. Manbao yawned and asked, "Keek, how long until dawn?" "About 50 minutes. Manbao was surprised and forgot to be sleepy. "So soon?" Keek said, "It's dawn at 4:45. Manbao suddenly felt that he couldn't sleep well. It was dawn so early, and he didn't feel like he slept. But after being silent for a while, she still pulled the quilt to her chest, hugged it, and fell asleep again. Manbao fell asleep with heavy eyelids. When she woke up again, Zhou Liru pushed her to wake her up. She was a little excited. "Little aunt, get up and watch the sun rise." Manbao got up hard and asked, "Did they all get up?" "I woke up early. Mr. Zhuang and Wei Xinggren went out to watch the sun rise. I was awakened by the movement below. Mr. Zhuang is very interesting. Originally, he wanted to call some of his own disciples, but when he thought that they were on their way for the past 2 days, it was not easy, and it was rare that they slept so well. Pedestrians go out together." When Manbao washed and dressed and went downstairs, Yin or the others were sitting underneath. Seeing her coming down, Yin or looking at her and Bai Shan, who was sitting and dozing off, couldn't help but doubt, Did you have a private meeting last night? Bai Erlang and Lu Huan, who were leaning against the door of the inn to admire the sunrise on the horizon, immediately turned to look at them with interest on their faces. Bai Shan lifted his eyelids and glanced at them, then said, "Yes, in a private meeting in a dream, I brought a few of you with me, does that count?" Yin He smiled, raised his hand and poured a glass of warm water for Man Bao. "I slept well last night, and they were all in good spirits this morning, only the two of you, feeling a little lethargic, with a little hair under the eyelids." Green. Bai Shan glanced at Man Bao and asked, "You also woke up in the early morning?" Man Bao nodded. Only then did Bai Shan say to Yin He, "Another group of guests in the inn left early in the morning." Yin or surprised. Man Bao also walked to the door and watched the morning glow with Zhou Liru and the others. The sky in the desert was very blue, and even in the morning, there were not many clouds in the sky. The only ones were still far away. The orange color seems to be blown by the wind, and the clouds on the horizon slowly changed shape, each of which is particularly beautiful. Bai Shan and Yin He didn't know when they came over, they just sat on the threshold and stared blankly. In the end, Man Bao and the others sat down when they were tired. When Nai Shenjun finished checking his luggage and came over, what he saw was the scene of 6 people sitting on the threshold and looking into the distance. Nai Kenjun. The shopkeeper, who came out with a smile behind him, couldn't help but pause, then remembered something, and immediately passed him to meet him. "Oh, why are the guests sitting here? What if I catch a cold? Today our inn has fresh hot milk tea made by, do you want to have a bowl?" Thinking of the bowl of milk tea they ate yesterday, and the unit price at the checkout later, several people shook their heads together. "Forget it, try something that is expensive and not delicious once, so don't try it again." The shopkeeper was a little disappointed, so he could only give them some pointers. "There are tables and chairs over there in the greenhouse, and the location is not bad. Young masters and young ladies, why don't you just sit there and watch?" But the 6 people didn't want to move. "I still think it's good here. I feel comfortable here too. The view is also good. I'm lazy and don't want to move. I'm hungry and don't want to move. They don't want to move and I don't want to." "Shopkeeper, the kitchen is already making breakfast. It won't take long. The young masters and young ladies will wait. You can watch it if you want. Anyway, most of them came here at noon and afternoon, and now the guests in the inn are theirs." The shopkeeper reluctantly bypassed them and entered. Man Bao and the others continued to look at the scene with their faces supported. Mr. Zhuang and the others climbed up to the sand dunes under the protection of the guards. After admiring the sunrise, they walked back slowly and saw the 6 of them sitting on the threshold. I couldn't help but ask, "Is the sunrise beautiful?" The 6 nodded together, "Good looking." "Okay, wake up early tomorrow, let's watch it together again." A few people in Manbao, "I don't know if it's too late to regret it now." Everyone gathered in the lobby for breakfast. After the breakfast, they packed some steamed buns and biscuits before leaving. They had only left the inn a few hundred meters before Nai Kenjun rode a horse to catch up with Bai Shan and Zhou Man in front, and said to Bai Shan, "I asked this morning, and the shopkeeper said he didn't know who those people were, but they were with us. The way they went was the opposite, they went the way we came from." Bai Shan breathed a sigh of relief and nodded to show that he understood. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2210. Nai Kenjun glanced at the sun, stretched out his hand to stop the team, and told everyone to stop and rest. Man Bao got out of the car and twisted his waist, feeling pretty good. Bai Shan got out of the car behind her, put on her hood, and looked around, sighing, "It's so hot, we have to wear a cloak when we leave tomorrow morning, and now we even wear a jacket. No more. Man Bao nodded, kicked the sand under his feet and said, because of them. Looking around, the sky and the earth are vast, and it seems that they are the only group of people. At first, they didn't feel that, after one night and another half day, everyone's mood was affected. Man Bao leaned on the carriage, looked into the distance and said, after staying in a place like this for a long time, I do feel lonely. This is different from the grassland. The grassland is also vast. It may take a long time to meet a herdsman, but the grassland is green. There are wild sheep, wild wolves, wild rabbits, wild roe deer, all kinds of wild animals, and there will be eagles in the sky. But the desert is different. Except for one or two small reptiles that I only saw after very serious searching, it seems that there are no living things in the world. The steward checked the water and came up to report, Master, Miss Man, we only have enough water for tomorrow. Man Bao returned to his senses and asked, didn't you say that there will be an oasis after more than 100 miles? Why haven't we seen it yet? Bai Shan also felt that they had walked for a long time, but Nai Kenjun said, we haven't walked 100 miles yet. Bai Shan couldn't believe it, are we so slow? Nai Kenjun said, the carriage is slow in the desert, my lord, when we reach Yumen Pass, we may have to buy a few more camels. Man Bao and Keek were all refreshed, and then nodded reservedly, Tim. Seeing her suppressed happiness, Bai Shan said to Nai Kenjun, we'll talk about it when we arrive at Yumen Pass. We'll go buy it then. Nai Junjun is used to it. These young masters and young ladies seem to be very interested in everything. They like to do things that they have never done and things they have never seen before. Zhou Liru became worried, then can we get there before nightfall? We can't walk 100 miles in a day and a half, isn't that too slow? She was a little panicked, so she asked Man Bao in a low voice, little ant, we won't get lost, right, with a look of fear on her face. Bai Erlang and Lu Huan just heard it, and they were shocked, and they all looked at Man Bao, their faces turning pale. Man Bao, Bai Er, what miscellaneous books did you read to Li Ru? Bai Erlang shivered, it's nothing, it's a Western travel journal written by a traveler, and it's about stories he heard along the way. 8 of the 10 stories are about how people who got lost in the desert died, or how did they discover new oases and gem mines, but, there are still a lot of dead people. Lu Huan also looked at it, some people fell directly into the scorpion pit and were gnawed to the bone. Even Bai Shan was startled, and hurriedly went to see Nai Kenjun, shouldn't we get lost? Nai Kenjun didn't want to talk to them anymore, but he still said, Master Bai, this is the only way in this desert, how can you get lost? Bai Shan pondered, there are no ruts on the road, how can we be sure that the road we are walking is the road? Nai Kenjun. The soldier on the side couldn't help but said happily, don't worry, Mr. Bai, we can still recognize the road, don't look at it, it looks like it's all sand, it seems to be the same, but the other sand on the road is the same. It's not the same, I don't believe that you stomp your feet here, and then go down and stomp your feet, the sand will be different. Even Master Yu came over to appease them and said with a smile, don't worry, adults, there are many people walking on this road, the desert here is not big, it's just like this, and then it goes out of the boundary of Suzhou and into the sandbar. There are more gobi and grassland, but less desert. So this road is still very obvious, and there is no wrong way. He said very experienced, only in that kind of big desert, it is possible to get lost after going deep. He paused and said, the adults are going to the western regions, and they will definitely have to cross the desert at that time. Be careful then. It's best to ask 2 guides to take them with you. Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at each other and remembered it in their hearts. Everyone took a short rest, replenished water, and continued. Because I wanted to rush to the oasis, everyone accelerated after getting on the bus. The convoy passed 2 dunes in a row, and when they reached the highest point of a dune, a town suddenly appeared in front of them, and the soldiers cheered lowly. Man Bao opened the curtain and looked out, surprised. It's really an oasis. Bai Shan squeezed over to take a look, and the two immediately dropped the half-played chess, and he Daji asked for a horse to run over by himself. Nikanjun saw that they took a few guards and ran away by himself. After twitching the corners of his mouth, he didn't say anything, and he pushed the convoy to move forward slowly. Even Yin he rode a horse and walked with them, looking quite close, but after they descended the hill, they ran for a quarter of an hour before they reached the place. This is a large lake, with green grass on the lake, dense forests on half, and rows of houses on the other. There is no city wall, and naturally there is no such thing as a city gate, and the convoy can enter from any side. But after entering, they can only walk around the lake. Bai Shan and the others restrained their horses and looked at them when they got close. Finally, they chose the side with the densest house to enter. The streets inside were all muddy ground, but they were flat. As soon as they entered, they saw someone setting up a stall, and the people inside looked up at them almost immediately. A young man's eyes lit up, and he dropped the things in his hand and rushed up before the others. Is your guest staying? My house has a yard, a big yard. There were also people similar to him, including women, who stopped in front of the horse and recommended their houses. Not only Man Bao and the others, but also their horses stamped several times in shock. Dagil immediately stepped forward with guards to stop them. Man Bao was still in shock, looked at the street that stretched down, and asked, "Do you have no inn here?" "No," the people surrounding them said in unison, and a young man said loudly, "Miss, there is no inn like the Central Plains, but our house is actually an inn. It is for guests and it is very clean. If you don't believe me, you can go and see it." Man Bao doesn't believe it, there are inns even on the road. This oasis looks like a transit place. How can there be no inns? However, she glanced back and saw that the convoy was still far away, so she didn't rush to make a decision, so she looked at Bai Shan and dismounted, and rushed to the surrounding people. "No rush, no rush, it's still early, we don't rush to sleep. By the way, is this a city or a town?" The next chapter is around 10 o'clock at night. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2211. By the time Nikanjun and the others escorted the convoy, Man Bao and the others were already squatting on the side of the road with the young people in this town and nibbling on melons. Of course, it cost money. The melons piled up in front of them were all bought with money. Bai Shan was soaked in the rain and dew. He bought the melons from several people, and then squatted on the roadside while eating and talking to them. The young man and the lady who sold the melons seemed a little embarrassed. They glanced at the melons piled up in front of them and said, "Young master, this melon can be kept for a few more days in a cool place." Bai Shan Ke said boldly, "It's okay, we have a lot of people, and we will finish eating in a while." The young man who spoke did not know that there was a large convoy behind them. He thought it was just a few of them, so he glanced at their guards and said nothing. Bai Shan distributed the melons to Daji and the others. After walking in the desert for 2 days, they would subconsciously save some water when they drank it, and their mouths would be dry, so as soon as they took the melons, they split them open and drank them one by one. "Chew up." Man Bao and the others were a little gentle, but they refused Daji and the others to split the melon with their own knives. That knife has killed sheep and peeled rabbits, and that's fine, mainly because it has also killed people, and they don't really want a knife that has killed people to chop melons. Fortunately, Man Bao also had a knife, so she touched her waist, took out a short dagger, and pulled it out to start cutting melons. Bai Shan was hesitant to say anything after seeing it, but seeing that they all happily took the melon and ate it, he swallowed the words that came to his lips. In fact, the knife that the queen sent is only afraid of killing more people, but it has been a long time. Bai Shan glanced at the melon in his hand and took a sip without any difficulty. Man Bao already exclaimed, "It's so sweet, can your melons be eaten so early?" The youth said, "It was planted in a greenhouse." He sighed, "Our melons are delicious, and the guests from the western regions like them, as well as the guests from the central plains, and no matter where they come from, they like to bring some when they leave. I heard that they are going to take home for their relatives to eat. So we will grow a little in the greenhouse, so that we can eat melons from June and continue until August. Normally, the melons here are harvested in July. But there are very few people this year. I heard that people in the central plains have a strange disease. That kind of strange disease is contagious. Hundreds of thousands of people have died, and several cities have been empty. Therefore, no merchants come, and these melons are sold. Don't go out." Man Bao and a few people, "How did the word spread like this?" The young people immediately asked, "By the way, you came from the central plains, right? Did you flee for your life?" The eldest lady on the side came up and asked, "I heard that even the Khan is dead." Man Bao was startled and waved his hands quickly, "Don't dare to talk nonsense, your majesty is well, not hundreds of thousands of people have died, only more than 2,000 people have died." The young people were very suspicious, "Are you lying? We've all heard that one city was sealed off, and everyone who entered it died. Several cities were empty in the central plains. So the merchants in the western regions didn't come after hearing about it? Some of them went halfway. After hearing about it, they turned and went north. They heard that they were going to another country." Man Bao, "Go north? Isn't that Huiye? What's there to go to?" Bai Shan, "That is there silk and satin in Huiye? Is there tea? Is there porcelain?" How did the young man know? He didn't even know where Huiye was, so he could only look at them blankly. Yin Or brought the topic back, "You are all local people in this town, so there is no business travel from other places." "Yes," said the young man, "there are those who have lived for several years. They have run out of money and can't leave. They can only make money here, and they can leave only if they have tolls." Bai Shan's eyes flashed and he asked, "Are there any people from the central plains?" "Have. Then there are people from the western regions." All. Bai Shan was satisfied and asked with a smile, "Where do they live?" The young people became vigilant and asked, "What is the sun looking for them?" Bai Shan said with a smile, "We are going to the western regions. If we want to find a guide, it is best to invite people from the central plains who have been to the western regions, or people from the central plains and the western regions." Hearing that it was this and not the accommodation, the young people suddenly put their guard aside and waved their hands indifferently. I guess where in the town are they helping people work? Those people said they came out to travel, but they didn't. I have money for accommodation, no money to eat, and I can't even support myself, so what's your travel history?" Therefore, the young people in the town don't like to travel far, and naturally they have never thought of being a guide for others, and of course they can't be a guide. In the eyes of young people, it is very dangerous to be far away from their hometown. At light level, they cannot go home like those in the town, and even have problems with food and lodging. As soon as the vigilance was put down, everyone started chatting from all over the world. Of the 6 people, even Zhou Liru can occasionally utter a sentence or two. The young people responded enthusiastically to her and Man Bao's questions. After all, who wouldn't like a beautiful little girl? So by the time the convoy arrived, Bai Shan and the others had already figured out the situation in the town, and they had almost eaten the melon in their hands. The convoy was just approaching the street, and it hadn't come in yet. Because there were too many people, there were too many cars and horses, and people on the street quickly found out, so everyone immediately left. Bai Shan and the others rushed over. This time it was men, women, and children together rush. God, so many people, How much money would they make if they lived in their homes? Bai Shan quickly grabbed a young man's back collar, pulled him over and asked with a smile, "What are you running for?" The young man shouted, "Let go of me, let me go, you don't have accommodation." Man Bao took out a dime of silver from his purse and threw it in front of him, and the young man immediately said, "Your eyes are really powerful, just like what the people from the Central Plains said, your eyes are like fire, my yard is really a few places. The best in the house, if you live in my house." "I don't live in your house," Bai Shan said, "your family lives in Zhendong, we want to live in Jingxi." The young man choked and said dissatisfiedly, "What happened to Zhendong? Didn't you just say that those few travelers who have no money live in the east of town?" Bai Shan said, "There must be an inn in the town. You take us to the largest and safest inn, and we will pay you." He gestured for him to look at their clothes and asked with a smile, "Do you think we look like people who will live in Zhendong and wrong us? Who cares, move in first, but don't refund money when you're not satisfied when you check out." But the young man also thought to himself, he glanced at the melons on the ground, they were quite happy talking just now, and they also bought so many melons from them, which was somewhat embarrassing to trick people. After hesitating for a while, he glanced at the people who had already surrounded the convoy. He felt that he would not be able to grab the soup, let alone the meat, so he sighed and nodded, "Okay, I'll show you guys. Go, but it's agreed, you'll be paid." Man Bao took back the silver horn, took out a bunch of money and said, "If you introduce well, I will give you half, if you introduce very well, I will give you all, if you introduce us to our satisfaction, I will give you the silver horn." The young man was stunned. "Your standard is too subjective, right? I wish the book friend Mo Yan a happy birthday, everything goes well, and every day is happy. See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2212. The young man thought for a while, but turned around and said, "Okay, I'll take you to the inn." Man Bao and the others immediately pulled their horses and followed him, while Bai Shan stopped one of the guards and whispered, "Go and tell Nikanjun to let him stay here at the intersection for a while, and we'll go to arrange a place to live first. The guard should step down." The young man led them into the street. The houses here were different from those in the Central Plains, and the appearance of the people was slightly different, not to mention the clothes and jewelry. When the people on both sides of the street saw Joe Man and the others were being led by the youth, they glanced at the youth with envy and regret, and did not come around to recommend their residence like they did at the street entrance. The further you go, the higher the house, the bigger the door, and the more shops on both sides. Man Bao found that many of the shops here were lined with wolf skins, melons and fruits and brightly colored cloth. Seeing her curiosity, the young man said enthusiastically, "This is our cloth. It's very beautiful. My family also has it. If the lady wants to buy it, I can sell it to you at a cheaper price." Man Bao smiled and said, "Let's take a look first. You still have quite a few shops here. Are you selling to your own people or to passing merchants?" "I buy it myself, as well as the merchants who pass by. Our fabric is very good and breathable." Man Bao decided to look back. The youth turned them into an alley, and after that there was a larger road, and it was right by the lake. The lakeside is lush with flowers and plants, butterflies are flying, and when the breeze blows, the heat in the afternoon will dissipate. Man Bao raised his eyebrows slightly and asked him, "How many big inns do you have here?" After the young man knew that they would not live in his own home, he would not hide it, and said honestly, "There are two families, one is here, the other is over there, the distance is not very far, and the location is the best." Man Bao, "Is accommodation expensive?" The young man smiled, "Does Miss still care about money?" Man Bao nodded and said, "I'm afraid that I won't be able to go home, and then I can only stay and work to earn money for steamed buns." I don't know where the sentence touched his laughter. The young man laughed and said to Man Bao, "No way." After he finished speaking, he said, "Now there are few guests and the room rate is not high. You can tell the boss that it is cheaper, and if it is not cheap, go to another house. He is definitely willing to be cheaper." The young man said this in nonsense, that greedy thief in ale will not let anyone who enters his shop let go. The accented Huyu Manbao couldn't hear it very clearly, but Zhou Liru understood it and whispered to his aunt's ear. Manbao raised his eyebrows, knowing what he knew. After walking for a long time, the young man finally stopped at the entrance of an inn with high lanterns. Before he entered, he started drinking loudly and greeted the people inside in nonsense, "Ale, I will bring you guests." Already, Manbao and the others knew that he wanted to make a profit, and they didn't mind such behavior. A middle-aged man with a mustache walked out quickly, looked at Bai Shan and Zhou Man with a smile on his face, and warmly invited them in to sit down. "Are the distinguished guests wanting to stay in the hospital or the upper room?" Bai Shan asked, "Do you still have a yard?" "Yes, yes," Ale pointed to the back with a smile, "the back row and the yard on the left are all my family's. I think the guests are distinguished, maybe they want to be hospitalized." Bai Shan looked at Man Bao, "Do you want to be hospitalized? A single house is naturally much more comfortable." Man Bao asked, "How much is the yard?" Ale then looked at Zhou Man and replied seriously, "Whether the guests want to stay for a short time or a long time, if they stay for a long time, they can stay for a month with only 2 taels of silver or a piece of silk. The price is comparable to that of Beijing." Man Bao asked, "What if I stayed for a short time?" "That would cost 120 cents a day, but water and firewood are not included in our restaurant. The young lady and the young masters have to instruct their servants to buy them." Man Bao, "How about going to the room? It takes 60 cents a day to go to the house. Apart from not having enough food, adults want to make tea or take a bath for free." Ale smiled and said, "To tell you the truth, there are only a few people in the town these days. The price, when there are many people, we go to the house for 80 cents a day, and the yard is not rented for a long time, and it costs 3 taels of silver a month. It sounds much cheaper than the inn they just stayed in when they entered the desert, but..." Man Bao and a few people looked out. There were all kinds of shops and inns, not to mention that there were so many people in this town who wanted to rent houses. The former is a separate business, not here. Man Bao asked, "How many rooms are there in a yard?" Allah introduced them in detail. The courtyards are similar, with a large room, a main room, 2 small rooms, and then there are stables and kitchens. Man Bao blinked, "Is it gone?" Ale spread his hands, "No more." "Oh, the rent is more expensive than the capital." Several people offered to see the house. Ale led them to look with a smile. He looked at them and said with a smile, "Young masters and young ladies are enough for 2 yards. They can come to our inn to stay in the next room. It's about Daji's guards. However, when they are away from home, how can they live alone and let the guards live elsewhere? Who knows if it will be robbed at night?" The yard was behind the inn, and there was a long alley, and it was their yard as soon as they slipped down. The yard is not big, half smaller than the yard where Man Bao lived in his own house. There are 2 rooms in the middle, one is the main room, and a small room extends out, and the other is the master bedroom, with 2 rows of houses below. There are 2 rooms in a row. The one on the left is a guest room. The room is not large, while the one on the right is the kitchen and the bathroom. It is very cold when it is cold here. The bathroom is specially built. On both sides of the yard there are open spaces for carriages and stables. It's small, but it has all the essentials. But it's too small." After looking at the room, Man Bao asked the shopkeeper, "Is there no bigger one?" Ale froze for a moment and then said, "Yes, yes, but it's more expensive." Bai Shan said, "Show us." The location of the large yard is better. It is on the same row as the inn, facing the lake. The yard in this row is relatively large. There are 3 main rooms, the main room in the middle, 2 rows of rooms at the bottom and 3 rooms on one side. There are 4 occupants, and the best part is that there is a second floor here. In addition to the attic, there are 4 other rooms on the second floor above the main room, all of which can accommodate people. Ale looked at their expressions and said with a smile, "The yard in this row is very valuable. It costs 5 taels of silver a month to rent, or $400 a night for a short stay." Bai Shan waved at Daji behind him, "Come on, bargain with him." Daji. The guards are also a little stuffed, and it's enough to kill people. Why do they still have to do the work of stewardship? But they had never eaten pork and had seen a pig run, so Bai Shan and the others gave way to the guards and gathered around to negotiate with the shopkeeper. Treasurer. See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2213. Taking advantage of the fact that the shopkeeper was surrounded, Man Bao and the others walked up to the second floor again, pushed open the window and looked at the lake opposite, and said with a fresh air, "This is a good place. If you hadn't been on your way, you would have lived for 10 days and a half months. Pretty good too." Bai Shan thought thoughtfully, "Are we on our way?" Man Bao also pondered, "It seems that he is not on his way." The two looked at each other, and Bai Erlang on the side nodded excitedly, Yes, we are not in a hurry, we are here for a study tour." Yin He nodded reservedly and said, "The scenery here is good, you can stay for a while longer." Lu Huan touched his waist and said, "My bones are about to break in the car these past few days. Mr. Zhuang must be more tired than us." Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at the people who were bargaining with the shopkeeper below, and immediately turned around and rushed down, pushing the guards out on top of them. Man Bao said, "I only wanted to stay for 2 days, but seeing the scenery here is not bad, it's okay to stay for a day or 2. Bai Shan, but there are so many of us that the rent is so high that it's not worth it." Ale squeezed out a smile and said, "If the young ladies are satisfied with this yard, then I can be cheaper. There are many rooms in this large yard, and the 2 guards can live in one room more than enough." Bai Shan interrupted him and said, "We have more than 100 people outside." Ale was taken aback for a while, and he was pleasantly surprised when he reacted, and said more and more enthusiastically, "Are you all going to rent a hospital? If the young masters book are in, I can give you 10% cheaper for the monthly rent here." After thinking for a while, Bai Shan shook his head and said, "No, 20%, and we don't necessarily live for a full term, but there must be some in 20 days. I heard that there are strong winds and sands in the desert from time to time, so we will look at the weather. The city is sunny and sunny, we will leave in about 20 days, and you will pay 80% of the monthly rent for our 20-day fee." As soon as Ale heard his toothache, he was about to speak when Man Bao said, "It's just water, you have to provide us with firewood for free." Bai Shan nodded, "Not bad. The trees in the desert are not easy to cut, they are not local people, and they don't know where to get the firewood." Ale did the math and disagreed. Zhou Liru, who ran after him, told him in nonsense, "Shopkeeper, there are no guests in this town right now. There are so many empty yards. If you don't want to rent it, we can go to another home. This yard is empty and you still need it. It's better to rent it to us, the rent is not cheap." Lu Huan was still calculating how much this was not cheap, but he couldn't figure it out after a long time, so he turned his head and asked Bai Erlang, "Do you know how much it is?" Bai Erlang glanced at him and said, "If we live in a full moon, it will be 4 or 2 a month, and if we only live for 20 days, it will be 20 or 7 coins. That's right." Although Man Bao didn't understand the Hu language of the locals, he could understand what Zhou Liru was saying, because she spoke slowly, and it was their own accent. She continued in Chinese, "We have to rent at least 6 such large yards. By the way, do you have so many large yards?" "Aller, what a coincidence, exactly 6. Man Bao sighed, "So this is fate." Bai Shan continued, "There is also a caravan with us. There are not many of them, but there are several of them. Even if they don't rent a yard, they will stay in the inn. These are all the guests we brought, from the shopkeeper. I heard that there hasn't been a decent caravan in the town for a long time." To be honest, Aller was heartbroken, but the price was really low. Bai Erlang snapped his fingers and said, "We didn't bring the cook with us, and the guards are okay, but we can't get used to their craftsmanship, so we have to eat all kinds of expenses." Ale gritted his teeth, nodded and said, "Okay, but it's agreed in advance that if you don't live for 20 days, the rent will also be calculated according to 20 days. Man Bao and the others immediately nodded happily, "No problem. They will definitely live for 20 days without wasting rent." So Bai Shan summoned a guard and asked him to go to the front to pick up Nai Kenjun and the others. "Let's just say that we have already booked an inn, and let them come over quickly." The young man who was squeezed out couldn't help being stunned, and it took a long while to find his voice. "Then, is the new motorcade coming from the street with you?" Man Bao nodded, "Of course, didn't you see that we didn't bring luggage? How can we go out so far without luggage?" "Young man, he didn't pay attention unless you said it." Ale made a big deal, and then he remembered and asked, "You don't seem to be going out to do business, don't you know?" Bai Shan said reservedly, "We went on a study tour with Mr. Ale breathed a sigh of relief, then smiled and said, "No wonder the young master is so arrogant. There must be 6 large yards. The merchants who come and go are reluctant to spend so much money." Bai Shaning's praise was mainly because they had too much jewelry and valuables in their luggage. The last time they stayed at the inn, they needed more than 20 people to guard them. There are so many people living in the inn, who knows when something will be lost. It's better to have a single courtyard. This yard is not too small. It is no problem to park 4 carriages in one yard. Daji saw that they had a good deal, so he stepped forward to pay. Bai Shan and the others talked about the price, and after sweating half-body, they were refreshed, so they followed the shopkeeper back to the inn, not only to blow the lake breeze, but also to see what delicious food was in the inn. Man Bao gave the broken silver to the young man, and then said with a smile, "By the way, I also want to ask if there are any good cooks here. Can't really let the guards and the group of soldiers cook by themselves. So if you can invite 2 cooks, let's invite 2. The youth was refreshed and immediately said, "My mother and my sister-in-law will cook." Man Bao 6 people, I really don't forget to promote myself all the time. Nai Kenjun, who finally got rid of the group of people who came over from the street, opened his mouth in surprise when he saw the yard they had settled on. After learning that they had settled for 20 days, everyone was even more speechless. A soldier couldn't help but leaned over to Nai Kenjun's side, "My lord, so, isn't that dereliction of duty?" Nai Kenjun returned to his senses and said indifferently, "Maybe there is a famous doctor here?" It always takes a little time to inquire about famous doctors and prescriptions. "Soldiers, you say yes." The 2 pedestrians also recovered from the shock. After looking at each other, their hearts calmed down a bit. "Forget it, this trip should be taken out to play. I don't know if they will be able to return to the capital at this time next year. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2214. The 6 large yards are enough to accommodate so many of them. It is still 2 people in one room, and a large yard can accommodate more than 20 people. Mr. Zhuang lived alone. He wanted to watch Bai Shan and their homework, so he lived in the same courtyard with them, while Wei Xinggren and others separated from them and lived in the main courtyard of another courtyard. Manbao and the others were very interested and did not want to live in the main courtyard, so they lived directly on the second floor. It is summer now. Although it is a little cold at night, it is not very cold, and it is a little hot at noon, but I don't feel it in the house or by the lake, so washing and bathing can be done in the bathroom of the house. Just open the window. Seeing the scenery of the lake, if Mr. Zhuang didn't want to go up and down the stairs, he would want to live with him on the second floor. Daji swayed around and saw that the fourth room in the attic was occupied by Chang Shao and Ziyu, so he obediently went downstairs to live, and lived downstairs with a guard. Bai Shan is talking to Master Yu. We are going to stay here for about 20 days. Will Master Yu wait for us, or go ahead? When we crossed the grassland together, he knew that they were casual, but he didn't expect them to be so casual, and they could decide to stay in one place for 20 days at will. By the way, aren't you officials? Are you in a hurry to report? Master Yu had tears in his heart, but he said with a smile on his face, just right, the guy under his command was quite frightened a few days ago, and the injuries on his body were not all that good. This time, he can just recuperate and calm down. However, Mr. Yu did not rent a big yard, but a small yard, where you can put down all the goods, and everyone can still live in a crowd. It is not that he is not in a hurry, but that he does not dare to be in a hurry at this time. The group of people he met at the inn 2 days ago, he smelled the same smell from them as those horse thieves. Even if those people are not thieves, they are not people to mess with. I just listened to their discussion at the street intersection. Recently, this area has not been stable. The smallpox epidemic in Xiaosu has changed. Who knows what the chaos will be like outside? He was eager to go to Yumengwan to make money, but he also cherished his life. So he took a deep breath, suppressed the anxiety in his heart, smiled at Bai Shan and said, I'll have to trouble the adults for the next time. Bai Shan naturally said that there is no problem, Master Yu is still very useful to follow the team, at least he knows the way. After eating, the group followed the youth to see his mother and sister-in-law, mainly to see their cooking skills. Manbao tasted it and found that the craftsmanship was okay, but it was only okay. Seeing that they didn't seem to be very satisfied, the young man gritted his teeth and said, Sir, my mother and sister-in-law are cheap. They only need 200 yuan per person. No matter if you live for 20 days or a month, they will cook for you. He added, they know how to buy cheap and good food, they won't lie, really. Bai Shan chuckled lightly and nodded, if that's the case, just stay. The young man breathed a sigh of relief. Bai Shan asked, you can't make a living from the passing merchants, can you? If there are fewer customers, what do you do for a living? Farming and grazing, the young man said happily after he found a job for his mother and sister-in-law. We grow a lot of melons and fruits, and the merchants passing by like them. If they don't buy them, we will have someone else take it and send it to Suzhou City, or to Liangzhou City, where there are many people and some people will buy it. We still plant highland barley and wheat, but if we don't have money, it will be difficult for us to pay taxes, and we won't be able to eat highland barley and wheat. Bai Shan nodded slightly, knowing that they had to buy rice, noodles, and grain from outside. When he came out of the youth's house, Bai Shan stood by the lake and looked down, just in time to see a fish passing quickly and smartly in front of him. He sighed, this is really a good place. The youth nodded in agreement, many people envy us, we have a big lake, which they can't envy. At the same time, Keek in Manbao's brain rattled, an unlisted creature has been detected. After a sound of ding ding dong dong, Manbao squatted down, stared at the lake and asked, can the fish in it be caught? The youth said, you can't fish, you can fish. Only people in the town can fish, but not everyone can. Not to mention fishing, they can't even hit the water casually. They need to buy water from others, but the town doesn't stop travelers from fishing, as long as they can catch it. Manbao nodded thoughtfully and asked, Where do you usually sell your live fish? The young man was stunned for a moment, then pointed in one direction, and said, but it is difficult to buy, because there are few fish and many people, and the fish that are usually caught must be sent to a few masters first, and then to a few larger restaurants. Use, and finally take out. Man Bao smiled, it must be that there is not enough money, as long as enough money is invested, who can't be in the front? Bai Shan also lowered his eyes and glanced at the bottom of the lake again, and asked the young man to take them to buy fishing tackle, and then went to the shops along a street in the town. Bai Shan said to him, let your mother and sister-in-law come over tomorrow morning. I have a steward here. Just follow his instructions. This kind of thing, even the matter of hiring the cook, should not have been taken care of by them. It was just that they wanted to go for a walk, and they also wanted to learn more from the young people, so they went along with them. When they came back, the sun had already set, but it was getting dark slowly in the desert, and even when it was almost time for them to go to bed, before going to bed, the sky was still dimly lit. In a short time, the residents of the town knew that there were guests in the town. Unlike ordinary merchants, the guests who came this time came for a study tour. Although they would live in the town for a long time, they would not restock. But they were generous, and I heard that even the accompanying guards could live in the large courtyard of the inn, and they were very rich. I heard that they paid for a lot of melons when they were on the street. What does this mean? It means that these people have a lot of money and are stupid. So when they wandered to the yard where they lived, they found that there were a lot of stalls on the opposite side of the door near the lake, selling everything, among which the most sold melons and fruits. Man Bao was very happy and went to look at the small goods. She dug out a particularly beautiful stone from a booth, and asked Bai Shan in surprise, does this stone look like a mountain? Bai Shan looked at it, reached out to touch it, and nodded, like. It's so beautiful. Man Bao touched again and again, and couldn't help asking the vendor, how much is this? The other side stretched out 2 fingers. Man Bao's eyes brightened, 20 words. Vendor, 2 taels. He originally wanted to call 20 taels, but who knew that the price she shouted was so different from his psychological expectations. Man Bao put down the stone as soon as she heard it, with a look of pity on her face. This price was also too different from her psychological price, so she didn't even bargain. She took Bai Shan and left. The merchant watched them leave with a bewildered expression, and wanted to open his mouth to stop them. In fact, he could bargain, really. Town residents, build tall buildings for you, climb mountains and waters for you, and go through fire and water for you, as long as you have money. See you tomorrow.